In the far reaches of the galaxy, where stars twinkled like tiny diamonds in the void, many civilizations existed, each more advanced than the other. Alien empires, powerful and vast, spanned across multiple star systems. They had explored every corner of the universe, discovered countless worlds, and conquered entire planets. However, one thing remained constant. They had all heard of the legend of humanity. But no one, not even the most curious of beings, knew whether it was true. Humanity, they said, was a race of beings unlike any other. Some believed that humanity had never existed, that it was merely a myth told by ancient cultures to explain things they couldn't understand. Others whispered that humans were a violent species, wiped out long ago in a war of destruction so great it left no trace. Yet there were a few, hidden in the dark corners of the galaxy, who believed differently. They clung to the idea that humanity had been more than just a story, that it had been real, and that it had gone quiet, waiting in the shadows. The truth about humanity was a topic no one dared speak of aloud, not even in private. The beings who once considered themselves scholars and philosophers had all but erased the idea from their minds. To speak of humans was to speak of nothing more than a cautionary tale, a bedtime story told to warn children of the dangers of becoming too curious about things they couldn't understand. As the decades turned into centuries, the legend grew. The stories of humans became tangled in mystery, fading with time. Some said humanity had been a race of explorers, adventurous and curious. Others described them as a race of warriors, fierce and determined. Some even believed they had mastered technologies far beyond the grasp of any other species, capable of traveling between galaxies in the blink of an eye. But most dismissed it as fantasy. For centuries, there had been no evidence, no ships, no signs of human life, no whispers of any kind that could prove their existence. And so, the galaxies moved on. The legend of humanity became just that, a legend. But deep in the bowels of the Galactic Council, a powerful entity that governed many of the alien races, there was a group that still believed. They were known as the Watchers, a secretive faction composed of the brightest minds and the most influential leaders in the galaxy, who had been tasked with monitoring all species and keeping track of potential threats. For years, they had observed the universe, monitoring every signal, every transmission, every anomaly. Their job was to be prepared for anything. And in their quiet chambers, far from prying eyes, they had kept a secret. They had never fully abandoned the belief that humanity might still be out there. It was on a quiet day, with no warning, that something happened. A signal, faint but unmistakable, rang out across the dark expanse of space. It wasn't just any signal. This was something different. It had the unmistakable pattern of ancient human technology. It wasn't a random glitch or an accidental message. This was something more. Something deliberate. The signal came from a part of the galaxy that no one had dared explore. A forgotten sector, abandoned long ago by the galactic mapmakers, deemed too dangerous or too remote to ever consider. And yet there it was, a signal that seemed to defy all logic, cutting through the deep void of space, as if it had been waiting for the right moment to emerge. At first, the reaction among the Galactic Council was one of disbelief. The signal was too old, too cryptic, it couldn't be real. Some of the council members laughed, dismissing it as an anomaly that would disappear as quickly as it had come. Others were frightened, their minds racing with the possibility that the myth was true. The idea of humanity returning sent chills down their spines. They remembered the stories, tales of a species that could not be easily conquered, who had fought in wars of unimaginable scale. But what could this signal possibly mean? Was humanity still out there? Had they survived? The Watchers were not quick to dismiss it. They had waited for this moment for decades. They immediately began to analyze the signal, poring over every detail, looking for clues that could shed light on its origin. The deeper they dug, the more confused they became. This signal wasn't just an ordinary message. It was something far more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Despite their best efforts, the signal was not easily decoded. It contained encrypted patterns, hidden within layers of frequencies that no one had been able to break through. It was a challenge, a puzzle, an enigma that no one could solve. The Watchers spent days, then weeks, desperately trying to piece together the information. But the more they tried, the more they realized they were dealing with something far beyond their own technology. For the first time in centuries, the question of humanity's existence loomed over the galaxy like a shadow. The Watchers were not the only ones who had noticed. Word spread quickly throughout the alien empires. The once dismissed legend of humanity had suddenly resurfaced, and no one knew what to make of it. Some races feared what might come. Others saw it as an opportunity, a way to unlock the secrets of humanity's ancient technology. But one thing was certain: the universe would never be the same. A council was called to discuss the signal. Representatives from the major galactic powers gathered, their faces filled with a mixture of curiosity and fear. They discussed the implications, debated the possibilities, and realized that they had no choice but to investigate. If humanity was indeed out there, they needed to know. They needed to prepare. The decision was made. A fleet would be sent to the origin of the signal. The risk was immense. The destination was unknown, filled with dangers and mysteries. But the rewards were too great to ignore. If humanity was real, then they would be the greatest discovery in the galaxy. And if humanity was alive, the consequences could be catastrophic for those who underestimated them. The fleet set out, leaving the galaxy's known space behind, following the faint trail left by the signal. As they approached the coordinates, the fear among the crews grew. What would they find? What was waiting for them in the darkness? Had humanity truly survived, or was this just another myth that had lived on longer than it should have? The galaxy waited, holding its breath, as the journey to the unknown began. But as the fleet sailed deeper into the vastness of space, one thought lingered in the minds of all who dared to hope. If humanity was out there, the galaxy would never be the same again. The journey through the dark expanse of space was long and tense. The fleet of alien ships, each one brimming with soldiers, scientists, and explorers, moved cautiously as they followed the trail of the mysterious signal. As the days turned into weeks, their destination drew nearer, but with each passing moment, an unsettling feeling began to settle among the fleet's officers. The further they ventured, the more isolated they felt, as if the rest of the universe had faded into nothingness behind them. There was no going back now. The first few encounters with strange anomalies along the way only added to their unease. Stellar storms with impossible gravitational distortions, massive space debris fields that seemed to shift unnaturally, and strange energy readings in the emptiness of space. These were signs, warnings perhaps, but none could deny that something was drawing them closer to the unknown. At first, the fleet thought it was just their imaginations, fueled by fear and the weight of their mission. But soon, even the most skeptical members of the crew began to believe that something was not quite right. It was as though they were being led by an unseen hand, the signal acting as a guiding star in a galaxy otherwise filled with chaos and uncertainty. The first real breakthrough came on the eve of their arrival. The signal, which had been growing steadily louder and clearer, suddenly stopped. A deep silence fell over the fleet as the last remnants of the transmission faded into the void. It was as though the very source of the signal had vanished, leaving only emptiness in its wake. What's happening? The question echoed through the communication channels, unanswered. The fleet's commanding officer, General Vex, stared at the readouts on his console. His eyes narrowed. Something was wrong. For a moment, the entire fleet paused, unsure of what to do next. The unknown was now more terrifying than ever. Had they been lured into a trap? Was the signal a trick designed to draw them in and then leave them stranded? General Vex gave the order to proceed cautiously. There was no turning back now. The fleet continued onward, each ship taking the same path as the others. moving ever closer to the point where the signal had originated. It felt like the universe itself was holding its breath. Then, as if in response to their arrival, a sudden burst of energy rippled through space. The fleet's communication systems were hit with a wave of interference, and all channels went dark. Panic spread like wildfire across the ships, and officers scrambled to restore contact with the command center. But for a few brief moments, the fleet was cut off from the rest of the universe, isolated in a sea of nothingness. Finally, the interference subsided. Communication channels flickered back to life, but the crew was left in stunned silence. The fleet had arrived. They had reached the origin of the signal. But what they saw was beyond anything they could have imagined. At the heart of a once-forgotten star system stood a massive, shadowed planet. It was unlike anything the galaxy's best astronomers had predicted. Covered in dust and debris, the planet seemed ancient, as though it had been left behind by the cosmos itself. But there was something unmistakable about it. There were signs of life, faint but undeniable. There was a presence on that world, a presence that had been hidden, waiting for the right moment. The fleet slowly made their way into orbit around the planet, their engines humming quietly as they positioned themselves above the surface. The sensors detected traces of human-made structures buried beneath the planet's surface, and a sense of disbelief washed over the crew. This was no myth. Humanity had been here, and they were still here. On the planet's surface, large remnants of what looked like human cities lay scattered across the landscape. Massive buildings, worn and broken by time, stood like ancient monuments to a forgotten age. But the most remarkable thing was the technology that remained. Some of it seemed impossibly advanced, far beyond the capabilities of the most developed alien species in the galaxy. Strange machines, some of which were still operational, hummed with energy beneath the dirt and grime. General Vex knew they had to land. They couldn't simply observe from the safety of orbit. This was history unfolding before their eyes, and they would be the first to witness it. The landing crafts were deployed, and slowly, one by one, they descended toward the surface, cutting through the atmosphere with precision. The alien fleet watched as their ships landed, their occupants stepping out onto the dusty ground, their hearts racing with anticipation. As the first explorers set foot on the planet's surface, they were greeted by an eerie silence. The ruins of humanity's once thriving cities stood like ghosts in the wind. No signs of life, no movement, just the still, quiet remains of a forgotten civilization. But as they ventured deeper into the ruins, something began to stir. At first, it was just a few strange markings on the ground, faint scratches and symbols carved into the stone. The explorers couldn't decipher them, but they were unmistakably human. They had to be. The markings seemed to lead them toward something deep within the ruins. And then, the unmistakable sound of movement echoed through the stillness. Footsteps, soft but deliberate. The explorers froze, their weapons ready, their eyes scanning the surrounding area. What was it? Was it an animal? A hidden trap? From the shadows, a figure stepped into the light. A human figure, tall, wearing a suit of advanced armor, and carrying technology that looked both familiar and alien. The explorers stared in disbelief. It was impossible. Humanity was supposed to be a myth. The human raised a hand in greeting, but the gesture was not friendly. It was cautious, wary. The explorers did not know if they were welcome, or if this was the beginning of a conflict they hadn't prepared for. "Who are you?" General Vex asked, his voice trembling with a mix of awe and fear. The human did not answer immediately. Instead, he simply looked at them, studying the alien faces before him. Finally, his voice broke the silence. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his words slow and heavy. "We've been waiting for this moment, but not like this." The first contact with humanity had begun, but it was far from what the galaxy's inhabitants had expected. The myth was real, and humanity had been waiting for them. The galaxy would never be the same again. The tension in the air was thick, as if the very atmosphere of the forgotten world was holding its breath. The human figure stood still, his eyes scanning the group of alien explorers who had just landed in his world. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, but there was an edge to it, a warning that sent a chill down the spines of the alien crew members. "You've made a grave mistake," the human said, his tone not hostile, but filled with the weight of years spent in solitude. "You shouldn't have come here. Humanity never wanted to be found." The words hung in the air, like an unanswered question. The alien explorers, stunned and unable to comprehend the full weight of what was happening, exchanged nervous glances. General Vex, still standing at the front of the group, stepped forward cautiously. "We came because of the signal." "The signal you sent," he said, his voice steady but edged with uncertainty. "We followed it here. We need to understand." The human's expression was unreadable as he stepped closer, his boots crunching the dry ground beneath him. He glanced up at the ruined city around them, as though remembering something long lost. Then he turned his eyes back to the aliens. "That signal wasn't meant for you," he replied, shaking his head. "It was a beacon, a warning." He paused, his gaze hardening. "And now, you're too close." General Vex could sense the desperation in the human's voice, but at the same time, there was a strange power in his presence, something beyond the physical that the alien leader couldn't quite grasp. Something older, more ancient than any of them could understand. The explorers stood in silence for a long moment, absorbing the weight of the human's words. What did he mean by a warning? Why had they been led here? And more importantly, why had humanity, thought to be lost for so long, kept itself hidden from the galaxy? Finally, General Vex broke the silence. "You're saying that you've been here, alone, all this time. Humanity didn't perish." The human let out a bitter laugh, but there was no humor in it. "No, we didn't perish. We survived. But we didn't do it by choice. We fought for our very existence." He looked down, as though searching for the right words. "When the war came, humanity was scattered across the stars. Many of us died. Others were forced into isolation, hidden away in systems like this one, far from the reach of the galactic empires." The words were enough to send shockwaves through the alien crew. A war. The humans had fought a war, one so devastating that it had nearly wiped them out. But if humanity was capable of surviving such a conflict, what kind of force had they been up against? And why had the galaxy never heard about it? "We've been living in the shadows for centuries," the human continued, his voice growing quieter. "No one knew where we went. No one knew what happened to us. But we've never stopped watching. We've never stopped remembering the galaxy that left us behind." General Vex's mind raced. He had heard whispers, stories from the old days, of a powerful, ruthless enemy that had once terrorized the galaxy. Could this war be the same? Had humanity fought against something far beyond anything they had ever imagined? The more he listened, the more questions filled his mind. The human didn't seem to notice the growing uncertainty among the aliens. He continued, his words tinged with bitterness. "You think you're the first to come looking for us. You think you're the first to believe the legends and think that humanity was just a story. Many have come before you. The galactic powers. They've tried to find us. Some even tried to wipe us out entirely, thinking we were a threat. But they never succeeded." A heavy silence fell over the group. What had they stumbled into? The myths surrounding humanity had painted them as just a lost civilization. But what they were learning now painted a far darker picture. Humanity wasn't a forgotten race. They were survivors. They had endured hardships no one could imagine, and they had kept their secrets hidden for centuries. "Why didn't you reach out?" General Vex asked, his voice quiet. "Why stay hidden? Why not let the galaxy know you were still here?" The human looked away, his eyes scanning the ruins of the once great city, the skeletal remains of what had been a vibrant civilization. "We had no choice. We were hunted, pursued by forces we couldn't stop. We had to remain hidden, in the shadows, waiting for the right time. A time when we could finally rise again. But not like this. His voice grew more somber. Not with the galaxy turning against us. For a long time, no one spoke. The weight of the humans' words seemed to settle over them like a blanket of cold. The fleet, despite all of its advanced technology, stood in awe of a people they thought had been wiped out. They had underestimated humanity's resilience, but the deeper they dug, the more they realized that the myth of humanity was only the beginning. There was so much more to their story. Secrets buried in the ruins of the past. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, General Vex spoke again. We came here because we believed humanity was gone. We thought we were discovering something new, something long lost to the galaxy. His gaze softened slightly, the tension easing in his voice. But now we know the truth. Humanity never disappeared. You've survived, and you've done it without anyone's help. The human nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. We've survived, yes, but it hasn't been easy. And now you've come here, and it's no longer just about surviving. It's about fighting. Fighting for what's left of our future. What do you mean? One of the alien explorers asked, unable to hold back. You've been hidden for so long. Why come out now? The human's eyes glinted with a flicker of something dangerous, something unfamiliar. Because the galaxy has changed, and so have we. We've learned too much to stay silent any longer. You think we're a threat now? You've seen nothing yet. The words were chilling. For the first time, the alien explorers began to realize that humanity was not the helpless, lost race they had imagined. They had been shaped by years of struggle and survival, and now they were ready to make their return. The human turned to lead them deeper into the ruins, his words cutting through the tension. You think the legend was just a story. The truth is darker. Humanity will not remain a myth much longer. And when we rise again, nothing will stop us. As the alien fleet moved deeper into the heart of humanity's hidden world, they knew one thing for sure. They had only scratched the surface, and the legend of humanity was just beginning. The air was thick with anticipation as the alien explorers followed the human through the ruined streets of the ancient city. Every step they took felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of history itself pressed down on them. The once mighty structures that towered over them, now broken and weathered by time, seemed to whisper of a civilization lost to the ages. Yet in the midst of this decay, there was something undeniably alive, something stirring in the shadows of the past. As they ventured deeper into the city, the human led them to a vast, cavernous structure at the heart of the ruins. It was an underground facility, a place that appeared to have been hidden away for centuries. The doors, which had been sealed tight, opened with a heavy mechanical groan, revealing a massive chamber filled with strange alien machinery. At the center of the room stood a large glowing device. Its design was unmistakably human, yet its technology was far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Welcome to what remains of humanity's last hope," the human said, his voice filled with both pride and regret. He motioned toward the device. "This is the legacy we left behind. This is why we stayed hidden." The explorers stared in awe at the device. It was a machine unlike any they had ever encountered, a fusion of human ingenuity and ancient technology that seemed to pulse with life. It hummed softly, sending waves of energy rippling through the chamber. But as they approached, they couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just some relic from the past. It was a weapon, a tool, something far more dangerous than they could comprehend. The human stepped closer to the device, his hand hovering over a console that was embedded into the floor. This machine was built to protect us. It was meant to shield humanity from the war that destroyed our civilization. But we never intended for anyone else to find it. And now you've come here, and the consequences are inevitable. General Vex stepped forward, his brow furrowed with confusion. What does it do? What is this machine? Why didn't you destroy it if you wanted to remain hidden? The human's face darkened. This is the only way humanity could survive. The war we fought, it wasn't just against other species. It was against a force that threatened the very fabric of reality itself, a force that wanted to erase us, to erase everything we had ever built. We created this device to protect ourselves, to seal ourselves away from the galaxy and from whatever came after. It was never meant to be discovered. It was meant to keep us safe. But you said you've been watching the galaxy. Why reveal yourselves now? Vex asked, his voice a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. The human looked away, his eyes distant. Because the threat we faced, it hasn't gone away. It's still out there. And it's coming. The room fell into a heavy silence. The weight of the human's words settled over them, and the alien explorers couldn't help but feel the gravity of the situation. What could this threat be? What could be so powerful that humanity had to hide away, cut off from the rest of the galaxy, for all this time? Before anyone could speak, the human continued. The war we fought was against something ancient, older than any of the civilizations in the galaxy. It wasn't a species, not in the way you understand. It was a force of destruction that consumed everything in its path. We thought we had defeated it, but we were wrong. General Vex's voice trembled slightly. Are you saying this force is still out there? And you have the means to fight it? The human nodded grimly. Yes, but that's not the only reason I brought you here. You see, when humanity was driven into isolation, we were not alone. There were others, other survivors, hiding in the far corners of the galaxy. We sent out the signal not to warn you, but to find them, to reunite with them. But now that you've come here, there's no turning back. The war is about to begin again, and we cannot face it alone. Vex's mind raced. You want us to help you. After everything. After humanity hid away from the galaxy, you expect us to fight with you. The human turned sharply, his eyes flashing with an intensity Vex had never seen before. You don't understand. We've spent centuries hiding, surviving, rebuilding. And all the while, we've been preparing for this moment. The war we fought, it wasn't just for survival. It was to protect everything you hold dear. The galaxies, the empires, everything you know, it's all at risk. The threat is real. And now, it's up to us to stop it. General Vex stood still for a moment, processing the gravity of the situation. He had known the galaxy was full of threats, full of unknown dangers, but nothing had ever prepared him for the scale of what the human was describing. A force that could destroy everything, and humanity had fought it. And now, they needed help. The alien explorers exchanged uneasy glances. This was beyond anything they had ever imagined. The human race, thought to be extinct, had not only survived, they had faced something far worse than any of them could comprehend. And now, they were asking for their help in a war that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. We've been preparing for this moment, but we cannot do it alone. The human said again, his voice softer this time. We've been hiding for so long, but we cannot let this enemy destroy everything. It's not just about humanity anymore. It's about the entire galaxy. And if you don't help us, we will all fall. Vex was silent for a moment. His mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, fear, uncertainty, but also a flicker of hope. The galaxy had believed humanity was gone, but they were wrong. Humanity was here, and they had something that could change the course of history. Finally, Vex nodded. We'll help, but we need to know everything. We need to understand the enemy you're facing. The human's face softened slightly, but the tension never left his posture. You'll understand soon enough. The battle is coming, and we need every ally we can get. If we don't act now, it will be too late. The human turned, his eyes fixed on the glowing machine. This device is the key. It's the only way we can fight back. But it requires more than just technology. It requires unity. And it requires trust. The fleet's crew members exchanged another look, realizing the magnitude of what lay ahead. The fate of the galaxy rested in their hands now. just as it rested in the hands of humanity. The war that had been hidden for so long was about to come to light, and all of them, aliens and humans alike, would have to unite to face the darkness that was coming. The first battle in an ancient war had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The tension in the air was almost unbearable as the alien fleet and the human survivors stood together in the dimly lit chamber. The flickering lights of the ancient facility illuminated their faces, casting long shadows across the room. General Vex could feel the weight of the decision that had been made, the responsibility now pressing heavily on his shoulders. The fate of the galaxy, no, the survival of everything, was about to be determined by their actions. As the human led them to the central command room of the underground facility, Vex took in the sight of what had been humanity's last stand. Rows of advanced weaponry, ancient star maps covered in dust, and remnants of lost technologies. It was clear that humanity had been preparing for something monumental, something catastrophic. And now, as the human spoke of a threat beyond anything the galaxy had ever known, Vex realized that this was no longer just a mission of discovery. It was a war for survival. The human, now visibly more at ease among his old comrades, turned to face the group. His face was hard, but there was a fire in his eyes, a determination that Vex couldn't ignore. He had witnessed the human's strength, his resolve, and now he understood the gravity of the situation. The fate of the galaxy rested on this alliance. "We've been waiting for a long time," the human said, his voice filled with a quiet intensity. "Too long. And now that you've found us, we have no more time to waste. The force we've been hiding from, it's close. Too close. It's no longer a matter of if it will come. It's a matter of when." Vex studied the human's face, weighing the sincerity in his words. This was not a lie. The human wasn't speaking from a place of fear, but from a place of experience. The enemy they were facing was real. It was not some abstract threat. It had already destroyed worlds, wiped out entire civilizations, and humanity had been on the front lines of that battle for centuries. The human continued, "This enemy, it's not like anything you've ever fought before. It's not about territory or power. It's about destruction on a cosmic scale. It consumes everything, life, energy, even time itself. No empire, no fleet, no species has ever been able to stop it. It's relentless. And it's coming." General Vex's stomach tightened. He had heard of the great cosmic forces that roamed the farthest reaches of space, galaxies colliding, supernovas swallowing entire star systems. But this was different. A force that consumed time itself. That was beyond anything he could comprehend. He turned to his officers, who were all listening intently, their faces as somber as his own. They had always faced enemies, always fought for survival, but this was something else entirely. "We need to act quickly," the human said, breaking the silence. "The fleet you've brought here, it's a good start. But it's not enough. We'll need more. We'll need every ally we can get, every resource we can gather, and the full might of the galaxy's forces. Only then can we hope to stand a chance." Vex nodded slowly. He knew what was at stake now. This wasn't just about the survival of humanity. It was about the survival of everything. The galaxy as they knew it would cease to exist if they didn't unite against this force. And even with the combined might of their fleets, there was no guarantee they would survive. But it was a risk they had to take. "We'll call in every fleet," Vex said, his voice resolute. "We'll reach out to every corner of the galaxy. The galaxy cannot afford to lose any more worlds to this threat." The human gave a grim nod, his expression unreadable. "Good, but don't be fooled. This enemy is unlike any force you've ever faced. It doesn't just destroy. It warps reality itself. It tears apart space and time. It corrupts everything it touches. Even if you have the strongest weapons, even if you have the most advanced technology, it won't be enough if you don't understand what you're truly up against." Vex's mind raced. How could anyone prepare for an enemy that distorted reality itself? How could they fight something that defied the very laws of nature? The stakes had never been higher, and yet it felt like the odds were growing more impossible with each passing moment. As the human began outlining their battle strategy, Vex's thoughts wandered back to the legends, the myths that had surrounded humanity for so long. The galaxy had always thought humanity was just a lost race, a myth from the past. But here, standing before him, was proof that the legends were true. Humanity had survived in ways no one could have imagined. They had endured a war like no other, and now they were fighting again. "What's the plan?" Vex asked, pulling himself back to the present. The human's eyes were sharp, and his voice unwavering. "We'll strike first. We have the technology to hit them before they reach us. If we can hit them at their weakest point, we might have a chance. But that's just the beginning. This war won't be fought with fleets or weapons alone. It will be fought with our minds, with our unity, and with everything we have left." Vex looked at the human, the weight of the words settling in. The human didn't speak of an easy victory. There was no confidence that they would succeed, only resolve, only the willingness to fight, no matter the cost. "We need to prepare," Vex said, turning to his officers. "Mobilize the fleet. Gather the resources we'll need. We strike at dawn." The human nodded. "We'll help you prepare. We have resources here that you won't find anywhere else. But remember, this isn't just a fight for survival. It's a fight for the future. If we fail, everything we know will be erased. And once it's gone, there will be no rebuilding." The team moved quickly, the sounds of orders being given, ships being readied, and resources being gathered echoing through the ancient halls. But even as they worked, there was an unspoken understanding that no matter how hard they tried, no matter how well they prepared, they were facing an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. The hours passed quickly, and soon the fleet was ready for deployment. The human stood alongside General Vex, staring out at the fleet in the distance. The ships, massive and powerful, stood in formation, their engines glowing brightly against the darkening sky. "This is it," the human said quietly. "This is the moment we've been preparing for. If we're to survive, we must fight like we've never fought before. The enemy won't stop, but neither will we." The fleet set off into the vast unknown, ready to face the unimaginable. And as they journeyed toward the battlefield, one truth echoed in the minds of every crew member. The war had already begun, but it was not a war for power or control. It was a war for existence itself, and the only hope they had was each other.